Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from various locations here in the city of Detroit, powered by the Eastside Community Network and sponsored by none other than the Ford Foundation. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform for authentic voices for real people on the east side of Detroit. We want you to like and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you listen to us on. We drop a new EP every week. So today we'll be talking to the Deputy Director of the Michigan State Labor and Economic Opportunity Office in charge of prosperity, and she is the key staffer for the state's poverty task force. Her resume is long, and she is a daughter of Detroit. Kim Trent, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you. I've been listening to you guys. I'm so happy that I'm finally able to join you. Although I'm not able to be with you in person, it's good to always hear your voice.
We're so excited to have you. And also joining us today is the President and CEO of TechTown Detroit. He's also done so many things, including having served as the Vice President of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Ned Stabeler, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Ned.
We may have lost Ned. We'll work on getting him back on. So we've been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic for a couple of weeks now, Donna and Kim, and we've sort of been sequestered in our various locations at home. My question to you is to add some levity to this conversation. Did you all manage to figure out anything fun to do while we're all quarantined in our various locations?
Well, okay, fun is relative because I was supposed to be spending the weekend in New York and my trip was canceled due to this. So I was home. I was going to New York every year I go to Columbia University Earth School to talk about sustainability in Detroit. And
just a light flex from Donna Givens, everybody. But
it's fun.
A light flex.
Just gentle, because Orlando was going to be paid to go to Syracuse. This was my volunteer work. But Orlando missed a paycheck. I just was going to, be out there during the week. Okay, but but you know what I did? Kim, you'll appreciate this. I discovered Real Housewives of Atlanta.
You discovered it?
Oh gosh.
I know. It's ridiculous. It's only been 12 seasons. I went back to 2008, okay?
Oh my God.
And I've been working my way forward because I was like,
the show is that
want
old?
to know what people are
Yes,
talking about. My children shamed me and told me I could not really be a real Black woman until I watched Real Housewives of Atlanta. So I finally know who Nene is.
But you know what's funny about that, Donna? You literally stole my answer because that was the only thing that brought me joy this weekend. And that is my secret shame that I watch that show. I'm so embarrassed about it, but I watch it religiously every Sunday. I do. I mean, I had given it up. So I was so proud of myself. I gave it up for years, and then I got sucked back in. And it's horrible. It's just horrible. And then I'm a horrible parent because I got my son watching it too. It's like awful. I'm so embarrassed.
Donna is really addicted because she even tried to convince me to watch it. I'm like, I don't even know.
I did.
Listen, if you're interested in human behavior, it is definitely an interesting show to watch.
No,
I mean, it's the worst of human behavior, but yeah, they I don't know. It's good TV. I'm sorry. It's horrible for our race. It's horrible for our gender. It's horrible for Detroiters because Kenya Moore is the worst.
Yeah, she is from Detroit. Do we claim her?
Oh, I went to high school with her.
Oh, wow.
I did. She was 2 years behind me at Cass Tech. And let me tell you something. She is the most beautiful person I've ever seen in person. I really do think that.
Yeah.
She is absolutely gorgeous. We had two women who graduated around the time that I was at Cass Tech who became the first and second Black women to ever serve as Miss USA. And Kenya Moore
Yeah, I
was
was
the
like,
second
she
one.
was Miss USA.
She was the
Yeah.
second, and Carol Gifts, who graduated me in 1987, was the first. And they both were
Wow.
gorgeous, but I remember Kenya Moore the first time I saw her, I walked up to her and said, "Oh my God, you are stunning." And I've
Oh
never done that before or
wow.
since to anybody. And then she just turned out to be such a horrible human being. Like, I wish I could take my compliment back.
So Ned, are you a fan of Real
I,
Housewives of Atlanta?
I
Did you
confess
indulge
with
this
you, I
weekend?
have never watched an episode, and I can completely.
Shame, shame.
You know what, Ned, now that you have time,
Yeah,
because it is,
You have plenty of time. Yeah, Ned has plenty of time, Don. I'm
I'm
sure
just
I
she's
sitting
know,
just
I
around
sitting
know.
around trying to
watching
find something
Netflix.
to feed
So
her.
yeah,
Well, there's no more sports, okay? There's no
It's
basketball,
true.
no Final Four, no nothing. You might as well watch, let's see, social aggression, since you can't watch.
Wow.
yeah. Without the,
That's
I'm kind of
funny.
going through withdrawal. I'm about to start watching darts or billiards or something. ESPN to
Something.
Ocho, because I'm hurting.
So it's the funniest thing happened this weekend. It was my mom's birthday, so we celebrated her birthday.
Happy birthday,
Last year in
Mom.
her 50s. Yeah,
Happy
last year in her
birthday.
50s. And we were home and she was talking about her students in TikTok. She wanted to learn how to do TikTok dances.
Oh,
So
okay.
we had a dress rehearsal for TikTok on Saturday and Sunday. And so coming soon to
Wow.
a social media platform near you, Orlando and Orlando's mom will be doing TikTok
All right, I'm gonna have to follow you.
Now that I will watch.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's been hilarious. So Ned, so what was your weekend? You find any levity this weekend?
As much levity as you can have when you're quarantined in with an 8-year-old and 12-year-old boy who want to destroy everything.
Yeah.
But we did all right. We tried to social distance, but still get out to the park. My kids wanted to play Pokemon, so we walked around and Pokemon Go'd everywhere. And
Nice.
other than that, we didn't do a whole heck of a lot. We just tried to stay in. I got to admit, I actually
Yeah,
worked most of the weekend just because we got so much going on,
yeah, we're going to talk about what you've been working on a little later on in the show, but it was a really beautiful weekend to be, around some green
Yeah.
space, going for a walk or around the park.
Well,
That we are encouraging people to do,
yes,
Donna,
we are
right?
encouraging people whose knees are not bad to walk around and to get outside. No, seriously, fresh air and sunshine will do you good. And I do get a little
Yeah.
bit stir crazy, so going outside really helps. I want to say something really funny though, or fun. I don't know if it's funny or not, but Kim and I belong to a book club, and normally we get together and we drink wine and we spend about 5 minutes maybe talking about the book, and then we go off and veer off in other directions, right? But this past
Mhm.
5 minutes on. That's a good book club meeting, Don. That we get 5 minutes in.
so,
Usually we have like the author and the title of the book, and that's about it. So.
and then everybody says nobody read it or half the people didn't read it. We're like, just come anyway. But we had a Zoom book club meeting, and this was the most efficient book club we've ever had in our life. We talked about
It was unbelievable.
I was like, wow. We were
We
examining
stayed on topic.
characters and plots.
We talked about plot structure and
Wow.
like placing what the novel was, what it meant for the bigger picture for the African diaspora. I mean, we had like really intelligent debate about a book for once. So maybe we just need to go with that format from now on. I think Zoom is the way to go.
Zoom is the way to go. I'm telling you, I was telling Donna that, this newfound efficiency is number one, it's amazing. And then number two, like it's addictive because now that you're so efficient, you think you can just schedule things on top of each other. And I
Right.
was like trying to warn folks, it's like, guys, take a break. I know it's efficient. Let's just make sure that we factor in some breaks to like go outside and sit on the porch or
And just to
something.
process what happened in those calls. Because I had one day last week, I think I had 8 conference calls.
Mm.
And then I had to come home and do a conference call. And at the end of the day, I was just completely fried. I mean, when do you have time to really just process what you're talking about on the call?
Absolutely. Yeah. So guys, take a break. Take a break. Remember to eat because we're sitting in our home offices all day looking
I
at
have to
these
tell you,
screens.
Orlando, that's something I have not forgotten.
Yeah, I don't have any
I wish
problems
I could
remembering
forget a
to eat
little bit
right now.
more.
I am stress eating everything. It's not the
Everything. And
COVID-19.
there's
I'm
no
putting on the
gym available.
COVID-35 right now.
don't go through your emergency
But
snacks, ladies and
Nate
gentlemen.
said, he
Listen,
said, if I
they
eat a
gotta
bag of
last.
potato chips and nobody's there to see me, did it really happen?
I was alone in the forest with my bag of chips.
Oh gosh. Wow, thank you. We needed that. We needed that laughter.
Yes, we
So
do.
guys, a lot of news
Mhm.
today concerning the COVID-19 pandemic coming from the White House, coming from our state capitol and the governor's office, and even from City Hall here in Detroit. My question to everybody tonight is, how are you reacting and digesting all of the information? Because it seems like there's so much information coming at us. How are you dealing?
I think go ahead,
Well,
Ned.
okay. I was going to say I'm trying to triage it because there's so much information, and I think you really have to try and sort of filter out some of the noise. So I just stopped listening to the White House altogether because I don't think anything I'm hearing from there is true. So I haven't listened to any of those press conferences or anything like that. I'm really trying to get my news from public health experts, and I think the governor's done a pretty good job of trying to balance, the severity of this, but also impressing upon people that we are going to get through it, and it's just going to require some sacrifice and some changes in the way we live, but also that there are some changes we have to make, and we have to adapt to some extent. So I'm really just trying to filter my news sources to try and only pay attention to really credible ones, which is harder today than it was probably 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that I was going to say one of the problems with being on a show with really smart people is they keep stealing my answers. So, because I swear I was going to say the exact same thing, Ned, about just how much I'm really paying attention to what experts have to say and just filtering, for a long time. I mean, really for the last 3.5 years or so, I just don't watch Donald Trump. I just can't do it. I just can't. So, but I've been forcing myself to do it lately just because of Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
I've just been thinking, okay, this is someone who is honest. This is someone who is a professional, who's a grown-up, who is willing to come behind this person and correct him. But I noticed he wasn't on the podium today. So, replaced by Bill Barr. So,
which makes no sense, by the way. No sense.
None. Well, it doesn't.
Exactly. Can I just say, I don't want to be involved in spreading false rumors, but I have to put this out here because right before this started, somebody who I have since silenced on my page said that Cardi B said that actors were being paid, celebrities were being paid to say they had coronavirus. And she says, do you think that's true? And people started chiming in, and I became enormously angry. So I'm having to watch my temper because this is the same person who said that the United States was weak because we don't crack down on people like China does and force people to stay in their homes. And this exact same person was willing to spread misinformation as though it had possible factual value. And so what I've been doing is muting ignorant people on all of my social media pages so that I can breathe again, because Donald Trump is one thing. I expect so little of him. But you know what? When people are attorneys and doctors and people who have degrees and intelligence and have the ability to process information and they choose to engage in this conspiracy, I just assume it's because there's entertainment value in it. And I think that we all have a responsibility. I'm all for joking, but I think we have a responsibility to speak facts on this, especially because there are real people who are losing their lives or fighting for their lives right now.
Right. Donna, you don't even know this, and no one on this call knows this, but I actually have two members of my family who are on respirators in the hospital right now, fighting for their lives for COVID-19. One who's very close to my immediate family. So it's not a game. It's very serious. We also know like leaders in our city who are very beloved and respected and just voices of light who are struggling. And it just hurts me that anyone would try to politicize or kind of do a disinformation campaign on something that is so very dangerous that I have family members who are looking at not having a father, soon if things don't turn around. It's not a joke.
I mean, is there there's something to be said about this age of social media when everybody has access to whatever information that they want to have access to and the ability to spread it, be it factual or not. Everyone is a journalist.
Right.
And so how, especially as people with, an infrastructure of knowledge and access to credible sources, especially Kim and Ned, how are you combating the spread of misinformation?
Well, my main technique is to try and use a credible source. So when, some knucklehead says that, well, Trump says this anti-malarial drug will, fix coronavirus. I like to bring in an actual medical doctor who has said, no, actually there's no proof of that. Because I think we have, to some extent, given people who've had success in one field, a lot of authority broadly, that, oh, you made $1 million or $1 billion selling a tech product. Clearly you must know a lot about lots of things, and let's ask you to run a government, or let's ask you to do urban development or whatever, when those two things are completely unrelated to each other.
Yeah. What about you, Kim?
The same, and not being afraid to call people out when they're being irresponsible with the way they use information or disinformation. I think elevating professionals. I think kind of giving people history lessons and explaining. But I don't know. I mean, I think one of the more tragic stories that I've read in the last few days was a poll that showed like 55% of Americans agree with the leadership that we've seen in this crisis on the federal level.
Oh my gosh.
When you see things like that, I mean, I have to say I do get it drags me down a little, because you just think, what evidence can be provided to you that things aren't going well? I don't understand that. I mean, I understand that a person who has the word president in front of his name is just automatically gets a certain amount of respect but the facts are the facts. I mean, I think if you just look at comparing this to other pandemics and the way that they were handled. I mean, obviously, no leader has control over how a pandemic evolves from a medical perspective, but they do have control over how we deal with it. And there's just no defending what we've experienced in this country. And but unfortunately, there are people who are willing to do that or to make allowances in a way that it's just disheartening. So, but I think that all we can do is just continue to just fight disinformation with facts and with people who are credible, and people have to make a decision for themselves whether they want to be tricked.
Yeah, I think that all of that is true. I think that we have a responsibility to call people out. So I agree with Kim on that. When Alex Jones said that the Sandy Hook parents were actors and these kids didn't really pass away, that was horrible. And it's also horrible when you have people who, it's not because they don't have the expertise, it's because they choose not to believe the experts, because they've just chosen to ignore things that are observable when they pass misinformation around for any reason. I think that there's something about that. The people shouldn't feel free to do that and have respect. And we're in a time right now where it's time for some public accountability. And I'm of the mindset that if you say something like that, I've got to correct you. And then also, point out the flaw and why you said it. I don't know. I don't feel very polite right now. And it's because, as you pointed out, last night in the middle of me watching Real Housewives, I got some information and I couldn't do anything but cry last night. And so, it's just not, it's not helpful. But I do want to say something also, Kim, about what you were saying about a president not being able to control what happens during a pandemic, because I feel as though in this instance, the president did have information and did have the ability to influence how things went.
Absolutely. No, and what I meant was he didn't control the genesis of it, but he definitely could have had a tremendous amount of control over how, when it hit these shores, our response to it. We should have been better prepared, better informed. So no, in no way am I giving him a pass. I'm just saying, saying you can't say, he didn't create the virus, but he created this, in my way of thinking. He bears a lot of responsibility for the severity that we are seeing.
I absolutely guarantee you that if Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton were the president right now, we would be in a far better position today.
No doubt about it.
In fact, Barack Obama did have H1N1 during his presidency, right?
Right.
And Ebola.
And neither of them reached these shores. So I think that, there is a world role for the president to play. This concept that America for Americans, and we don't have to worry about what happens in the world, and we'll just wait till it comes here, and then it becomes a problem, is so ignorant. It's like we have ceased trying to provide world leadership on anything. And we've decided to, just, no longer be in any way a factor in international affairs. And I feel as though much more should have been done to guide not only what happened here, but in other parts of the world, which is what we've done in the past.
I mean, he disbanded organizations that could have stopped it, or could have at least, we could have addressed it globally, or at its genesis, instead of waiting until it hit Americans. But even after it hit American shores, we still didn't do anything.
Well,
we tried to lie and dissemble.
We still didn't do anything,
that they were being, hoodwinked when, weeks after we knew it
by a hox.
Meanwhile, they were all selling stock.
There you go again. Ned. Sorry.
But you want to know the other thing that he was doing? He was arguing with governors, particularly the Michigan governor, who is actually trying to do something to stop this spread. He's sparring with our governor, Kim. What was the governor's administration's response to Donald Trump calling her out on Twitter?
Well, I mean, I think the governor spoke very well for herself. I think what we have to do is keep our eyes on what's important. And I think that's what the governor has done. I think that she was rightfully astonished that you had a president of the United States who was saying, it's not, essentially setting governors up in competition with each other and with the federal government for resources. I mean, I don't think any person who's a leader on the state level would not think that is an absolutely astonishing kind of course of of action for a president to take. And the president and the governor simply, expressed her astonishment. And the president, in his typical bullying fashion, tried to attack her. But of course, anyone who's paying attention will look at a track record of Gretchen Whitmer for COVID-19 response and a track record of Donald Trump, and I think you would recognize who has the upper hand.
Kim, that's a great point you made. That he's pitting states against each other, and we don't have a federal healthcare system in this country. We have fragmented private healthcare systems and state responses, and sort of loose coalitions of public-private partnerships. And so when the states sort of end up in this place where they're left on their own, you see states like California and now in New York who are rightly trying to aggressively respond to the healthcare crisis that they're experiencing in their state. And they're doing exactly what, human nature says. Go buy all the protective equipment, right? Go buy all the ventilators. Right. Go buy that. Literally, my brother-in-law just got hired by Cuomo last week to do that. And he is going to try and buy everything he can all over the world so that people in New York have access to it. And what that means is that people in Michigan won't. And although we're up next, so hopefully we'll be able to get in there, or maybe GM will hook us up. But then the people in Indiana and Wisconsin, they won't, right? I guarantee you, if Barack Obama was still president right now, he would be having a conversation with all the governors and saying, no. I catch any of y'all doing that, there'll be hell to pay. This is how it's going to work, okay? I'm going to do the assigning based on numbers and who needs, and we're going to order it centrally and yada, yada, yada. But that's leadership. We don't have that right now.
I wonder about the new normal, though, because I cannot imagine that after this, there will be a time where people do not use a lot more protective gear. I think that as we move on, people are going to change the way they interact in public. I can't see it not happening that way, because it feels as though even after this initial curve goes by, people are going to still be at risk for infection for a number of years. I don't know that you can eliminate the virus in that period of time.
Sure.
And so I really see some new normals that are probably going to take place that we haven't even imagined, and industries where people are going to walk around in face masks. You see that happening in other parts of the world, and I think it may happen here. What do you think?
I mean, when do you think you'll feel comfortable? This is going to change our worldview, I think. And so I think you're right. I think that it is going to change how we behave in public. It's going to change how we view. I'm never going to push the elevator button again the same way. Ever. I just can't see that ever happening again, because, even when we get the all clear sign, I just don't think that, people are going to have that level of confidence. But I think that when this is kind of pointed out, as you said, as we've said, the folly of not having at least a federal approach to public health, to how and I think that it also points out the folly of this idea that the market is God and the market controls everything. That debate, and which is being played out in Congress right now, this idea that this trickle down nonsense that has been disproven time and time again. And we're still relying on this idea that, that's what's driving Donald Trump's whole approach with pitting the states against each other and leveraging, when he could leverage the federal government's buying power to help everybody.
Right. Well, can we,
him making the choice like, oh no, I'll let you guys fight it out, and I'll just sit back.
Can we sit there for a minute though, Kim? I want to talk about that in the context of your role at the state. We've had in the city of Detroit so many challenges where the needs of poor people have been just underserved for decades, right? And so, how excited I was there was going to be this task force at the state level just focusing on poverty. Because 20 years ago, if you said the word poverty was a bad word, we don't use that. We call people low income. And I'm like, no, if you're poor, and we need to call that out, because you can't fix something you don't name, right? So now we have that, and all of a sudden, within like 2 weeks' time, water is being restored. DTE is restoring
Mm-hmm.
service. Evictions are ending. No tax foreclosures.
Mm-hmm.
Free bus rides. We're setting up places for people to shelters for people to sleep and food distribution centers all over the city. And I'm like, whoa, this is great,
Right.
right? And I wonder.
I had a moment last week where it looked like Congress was going to do the right thing, and even the president was on board with some ideas that I think everyone on this call would probably really be on board with. Some of the ideas about how to deliver healthcare in a way that people have more access to healthcare, how to deliver, you know, cash assistance to people. I mean, things that we just thought were unthinkable in the United States that were being debated. And I had a moment where I just thought, did we just rope-a-dope Donald Trump into like being
To
right?
yeah, to give people human rights, right?
Yeah.
Right. I
It's
mean,
something that,
it's such a horrible way to have to do it,
but
but
it's also
is he
very
actually going to? And then
offensive,
of course
Kim.
there's
It's very
Mitch
offensive.
McConnell.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell, kind of raised his ugly head again, and we're back to, no, we don't care about poor people. But yeah, I mean, I just think that, I think that it was interesting that kind of people like you, Donna and Orlando, and others who, and who have for years been talking about the need to have a real strategy, a real plan, a real infrastructure, to help lift people out of poverty. And it's funny because I actually struggle even with the word poverty too, Donna. Because I recognize, I think being in this work has helped me recognize it is because even though I think I'm pretty aware of um of how words are used, that word has been infused with so much shame by a culture that has vilified poor people, that you're right. I mean, the word poor does make kind of the hairs on the back of your neck stand up because it seems like a judgment word. And so I think that, when we called this a poverty task force, and it's probably better called an anti-poverty task force. We're not cheering for poverty. We're actually cheering for the eradication of poverty. But I think that, to have the um, vision to see that that's a priority when you see people like Reverend William Barber and others who have tried to keep that on the national agenda, and it has fallen off time and time again. So I'm very proud of the state of Michigan for recognizing that we can and should be a leader
Yeah.
on this
So,
front.
so my question though is, and I agree with everything that you said. I think that, for me, when we don't use the word poor, it's like being colorblind. It doesn't change the condition.
Mm-hmm.
It just changes people's
That's
recognition.
right.
You don't have to pay attention to my pain as long as you don't call it out. But
Right.
I think
Right.
that one of the things I'm wondering is, do you think that there will be a new normal where we're going to start really caring about and start delivering on a social safety net? I'm not talking about Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell, but I mean society as a whole. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think that the tolerance and the appetite for doing that has increased as a result of this crisis?
So I have a lot of thoughts on that because I've been arguing a bunch today with people who've told me that, you're starting to see Nolan Finley came out and said the cure is worse than the disease. And that's apparently the right. That's the new talking point on the right.
Yeah.
That all of this response and shutting down the economy is going to really hurt people more than the disease would, which is really disingenuous. They really just mean it's going to hurt business owners
Right.
a bunch. But that's their argument. And someone, one of my arguments, counter arguments, is that, look, you can't solve the medical issues with a check, but you can solve some of the economic and social issues with a check. And Donna, as you mentioned earlier, the argument that, we can't put a moratorium on water shutoffs or on evictions, that's just not economically feasible. That argument's gone because apparently it is.
Right.
We're doing it.
Apparently.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reality is we can stroke a check to fix that. So we can go to the water department, we can go to the utilities and say, how much money did you lose because of, people who aren't paying their electric bill? Okay, here's $28 million, or here's the number. And suddenly people have access to healthcare and education and housing and, some basic human rights and things like
So
that.
can I jump in and just name that I think the underlying issue around will to do it, number one, from my vantage point, is racism. Everybody got a problem with Dr. Martin Luther King when he started talking about economic equality, because that's going to cost somebody something, right?
Right.
And now that we are seeing I don't even know if it's a restoration, because I don't even know if people had these kind of rights before, not at least not in my lifetime. But I'll go ahead and say it, for lack of a better phrase, restoration of human rights. Is it because that there are people in the elite and the top 1% who will be affected if some of these structures aren't in place for the most marginalized among us? And so I'll use the water for an example. Poor people not having water amidst a public health pandemic can potentially affect me as a 1%. So let's figure out how to make that happen so that I can remain in my bubble. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense, but here's my somewhat cynical approach: is that, look, we are to stop the health crisis that is upon us. We're going to have to significantly damage our economy. Like this is sent us into a recession. It might even be a depression. But when we were in a good economy, and we could argue whether or not we were really in a good economy a year ago, based on who was benefiting and who wasn't. But by many of our traditional measures, it was a good economy. Were we spending any time working with the people who are the most vulnerable in our society? Were they getting the attention they deserve? No. But now, since the economy is going to be so bad for everyone, I think I'm somewhat cynical and optimistic, to your point, Orlando, now that it's affecting elites, that we will do things that are more comprehensive that will end up helping everyone.
I'm going to just use a little bit of age privilege here, because I'm the oldest person in this room. And I remember a time when there was a social safety net. I remember a time when we had aid for dependent children was higher in terms of the amount of money it was providing. And I think at one point we were providing cash benefits to about 87% of people, families with children who were poor. There was a time when general assistance existed in this nation, or in this state for sure. There was a time when public housing existed in this city. And I remember terms like social safety net being things that people wanted to protect. There was a time when the United Way was not trying to help people become self-sufficient. It was trying to help meet people's basic needs. And then we moved away from that into this whole concept that all charities should be used to help people achieve self-sufficiency. So we stopped paying money into programs like Leader Dogs to the Blind. So I guess the blind wouldn't need Leader Dogs anymore. I don't know. Mentally disabled people were not going to have struggles anymore. And it was an unrealistic paradigm that we created that allowed certain people to just persist in misery. And, but I remember that not Ted Kennedy, John Kennedy. Oh, come on now. Robert Kennedy.
Robert
Thank
Kennedy.
you. Somebody save me. Robert Kennedy's whole focus was an anti-poverty campaign. He was going and looking at childhood hunger and trying to address those things. And so I think that we can imagine a time when we did a better job, because in my childhood, we did a better job. There was a time in my childhood where people were going to college on Pell Grants, and Pell Grants paid almost the entire cost of going to college. So let's open up our imaginations to believe that it's possible that we will be in a different paradigm than one where the only thing that counts is money. And now that,
but I think that's why.
Go on.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think that's why intersectionality is so important. I think Orlando's point is so salient, because when you look at the resistance to this idea that people who need help should get help, a lot of it is grounded in. I mean, there's a reason that Ronald Reagan, when he created the welfare queen trope, he picked a black woman on purpose. It was
Yeah,
not by
it's
accident.
well
And so,
branded. Yes.
right. And so I think that as we have, that's why I think when people ask, why isn't Bernie Sanders getting more traction among Black people? And, I don't want to get into like a Democratic debate, but I do think that a discussion about class that doesn't also engage race and gender is just not going to move the needle for people, like a majority of people who live in cities like Detroit. A big part of my job, I think, with this poverty task force is making visible the people who are living in poverty in places like Lake
That's
County,
right.
Michigan, because poverty is not something that is restricted to Detroit, Flint, and Benton Harbor and
Mm-hmm.
Muskegon.
Mhm.
It's all over the state. There is not one county in the state of Michigan that has an ALICE rate, and ALICE stands for, asset limited, income constrained employee. These are, the working poor for all intents and purposes. There's not one county that has a less than 30% ALICE rate in the entire state of Michigan. So this idea that it's widespread, and I think that the emergence of ideas like the kind of ideas that Andrew Yang was proposing, we even had some Republicans who seem to be grasping in recent years the importance of not vilifying the poor necessarily, of creating pathways. We might not all want to get there the same way, but at least there has been a discussion that I think has opened up among some. But then I think that's made other people double down more, the people who are really committed. So when you start having like a little bit of agreement, a little bit of loosening, then necessarily the nature of politics is that then you have kind of the people who think it's their job to conserve, to kind of go into overdrive, and that's how we end up with the mess that we're in
And
right
if I
now.
could just say,
So
real quickly, that Bernie Sanders' ideas are popular. Bernie Sanders, the man, is not. So if you look at the Democratic platform under Joe Biden, a lot of those ideas have been popularized even in the Democratic platform. Maybe not as extreme, maybe not as complete, but a lot of those ideas have become things that people are really demanding in our society right now. So I'm an optimist, and I believe that you cannot kill a hope or a dream.
yeah, so the governor, Michigan's governor, made national headlines today, issuing an executive order to stay home and stay safe. And Kim, I wanna rope you back in, as someone within the administration focused on economic opportunity. How do you foresee the state's most marginalized populations coping with this executive order that the governor uh, said that will go into effect midnight, very early Tuesday morning? How is this going to? I imagine that it will affect people in poverty different than other populations. What do you say to that?
I mean, I think obviously you're right. Although I do think that we are going to see entire categories of people who have never had to rely on support and assistance from governmental entities who are going to have to do that for the first time. I think that's going to be emotionally unsettling for a lot of people. I think it's going to be, it's going to be rough sledding for a while.
Mm.
I think it's going to have a much deeper impact for those who are living in poverty. Absolutely, absolutely. They have a much smaller margin, and we've seen even when we hear kind of the happy talk about the economy before it collapsed, of course, but where you saw the top 20%, the top even 1% who've had exponential growth in their portfolio, how little that affects those who are, the ALICE rate in a state like Michigan has actually grown during that same time. So economic instability is not new. However, I don't think no one on this call has ever, or no one, who's having this discussion has ever seen what we're about to go through. And I think that it's going to require incredible creativity, incredible, I don't want to say generosity, because we have such economic inequality in our society that it's not even about generosity. It's about writing kind of a slow um, kind of development that we've had of this kind of society where a small group of people have all the money And so
Yeah.
now that's just a lot more visible. And I think the people who have all the money, in some ways, it's going to be in their best interest to, so you'll start seeing some landlords, loosening their rent requirements and that kind of thing. And I think that those are the right things to do, but I think we have to have a much deeper conversation about how we got here in the first place, and why people don't have the resources, why people don't have a month of money set aside for emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because they're irresponsible necessarily. It's because they don't have the same earning power that we used to have at a time when we would pay people what they were worth, or pay people, instead of paying people as little as possible. We recognize that if you give people a decent wage or decent salary, you're helping the entire economy, including the people who are purchasing your goods or services. So I think that we are going to, so what we're trying to do is we're having a lot of conversations with those business leaders. I mean, that's why I think it's really important, the things that Ned is trying to do to create opportunity and to help support small business owners, especially. I mean, I think we want to have a society where we're encouraging entrepreneurship. And, this is going to be a real challenge to entrepreneurship. It is. I mean, we know that a lot of business owners just don't have the same margins as others.
Yeah.
And so I think that, to the extent that we can help, shore up business, I mean, I think that's very important, but we also cannot walk away from individuals in the society who, because of, this catastrophic medical crisis, are finding themselves out of work, or maybe weren't even working before all this stuff happened, and just have absolutely no margin now. And Michigan, when you look at things like the TANF, how TANF dollars are distributed, we are just kind of the worst actors in a lot of ways when you talk about a social safety net for the state of Michigan. It's just not there in a lot of ways. And so I'm hoping out of this horrible tragedy will come a real discussion about the need to have a social safety net, not just in times of crisis, but um, for all times.
That's a
Well, Kim,
standard.
I think you nailed it when you said
Yeah.
we're not asking for generosity, given the inequality that exists. I would argue we're just asking for some basic humanity for some people, and it's in their best interest, because if they don't step up now, it's not. They're at a very huge risk of it being taken away from them. We start getting this level of inequality that we have in this country. We haven't seen it in 80, 90, 100 years. You start getting into, let's get the pitchforks and the torches out. And when you see, the Bezoses of the world, or people closer to home, who are right now sitting on billions and billions of dollars, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not giving my workers paid time off to help out in a public health crisis."
Right.
Man, we were already going to have a ballot initiative for progressive income tax in Michigan this year, which unfortunately has been disrupted by all this gathering the signatures. But you don't think that doesn't come back with a vengeance next year? We talked briefly about the fund that we've been raising to help small businesses, but in the last week, I've called every rich person I know. And I'm a mediocre white dude. I know lots of rich people. So I've been calling all kinds of people, and some of them have been great. And some of them who have lots of money. I mean, do I get a G6 or a G7 money?
Wow.
No, I'm sorry, I can't help you. That's the kind of stuff that is really going to come home to roost, because people are taking note right now. They're making lists right now. They're looking at what businesses are being supportive, what people are leading. The CEO of Consumers came out today, Patty Poppe, and wrote $1 million check for small businesses in Jackson.
Yeah.
You don't think $1 million goes a long way for small businesses in Jackson? Woo! She's going to help 100 businesses out there, or 200 businesses stay in business, right? Dan Gilbert. Dan Gilbert came out today.
Well, Ned, I want you to talk to us a little bit about the Small Business Stabilization Fund, and who you're partnering with, and who can apply, and what is the monetary goal? You sort of touched on it, but I want to just give you the opportunity.
So here's the premise. The premise is that, as Kim touched upon earlier, even in the entrepreneurial community, there's a real disparity of margins, of economic security. So JP Morgan did a study last year. 47% of small businesses in this country have less than 2 weeks of cash on hand. So almost half. But if you go into Black and brown neighborhoods in this country, it goes up over 90%. So here you are looking at virtually all of the small businesses in Detroit having less than 2 weeks cash on hand, and we're facing getting locked down for a month or 2 months. So basically, almost every business in the city of Detroit is at risk right now. So we stepped in and we said, okay, what are we going to do about that? And some of those rich people I called told me, no, it's cool. The SBA is going to make loans. They'll give this and that. And they don't understand that in these communities, especially small businesses in general, but especially in these communities are operating on smaller and smaller margins. They are already taking on have as much debt as they can service. And it's not like if you're in a restaurant, there's pent-up demand. So if you open up your restaurant again in 2 months, Orlando, you're not going to go and eat 2 dinners, are you? No, you're still going to eat 1 dinner. You're not going to get your nails done twice, right? You're going to get it done once, as opposed to like maybe a manufacturing business where there's a backlog of orders or, things like that you've got to make up. So there is no capacity to take on more debt. So we looked at that and said, what do they need? They need money. When do they need it? They need it now. So I'm really proud of my team because in less than 4 days, they looked at models around the country. Seattle, which is, a few weeks ahead of us in this process, had set up a similar type program. We said, great, let's transfer best practices in what they're doing. And we changed it a little bit to better fit our market. But we basically said, here's a way to get businesses up to $5,000 of cash. They can use it for payroll. They can use it for rent. They could use it for inventory, whatever they need to keep the lights on, to general business expense. And you know what we said? We don't want to be very restrictive, and we don't want to make it too many hoops to get through. We want to err on the side of speed and trusting the people closest that if we give this business owner $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, they'll do what's in the best interest of their business to keep it open. And small business owners, they're going to take care of their people if they can. So that was our thought. We're targeting the smallest, most vulnerable businesses, 10 or fewer employees. Owners have to be like 80% of area median income or lower because, Mitch Albom owns a business in Detroit, but we're not giving his water ice company any money, So those kinds of things. And we were able to raise, in about 6 days now, we've raised over $400,000. All of it philanthropically.
Wow.
But we've had applications open for a couple of days. We're sitting on, last I looked, $1.25 million worth of need in 3 days.
Yeah.
We know there are 14,000 businesses in the city of Detroit with fewer than 50 people in it.
So
how do we help all those businesses?
I want to thank you for doing that, Ned, and for
go ahead,
investing
Donna.
your time and effort to help small business owners. I know that at ECN, we're very concerned about helping those on Mack Avenue, a lot of the fragile business owners. I remember that sometimes crisis really does help people understand their interdependence. And in fact, sometimes it also helps us to remember to be compassionate. And so I want to be an optimist who believes that somehow all of this will help revive the social compact, will revive the desire to be there for others, not out of charity, but out of love and out of compassion and all of those things that have kept us separated for so long. So right now we're all living in our separate homes. We can't hang out anymore outside of Zoom, but we're all dealing with the same thing, dealing with it differently because some people have more assets than others, but we're all scared. We're all struggling to find toilet paper. We all can't find grits anymore. And we're dealing with some issues. Is it possible that this will bring us together from a spiritual level, do you think, where people really become more caring in their attitudes?
I think so. My family took a walk yesterday. We've taken walks basically every day since we've been locked up. And I tell you, it felt a lot like right after September 11th. You know, every people we saw out on the street, we maintained our 6 feet distance, but they all smiled and waved and said hi, like, you know, people we didn't know. But it definitely felt from that perspective like we were all in this together and we were all going through sort of a communal experience. I mean, this is going to be the thing, you know, 20 and 30 years from now that our kids and grandkids are going to talk about, like, what did you do during the quarantine? What did you do, you know, back then? Sort of like we might have talked about the Challenger explosion or 9/11 or something.
Right.
So I hope so. I hope you're right. I think so. I'd like to think so.
I hope so. But, you know, I think that we've gone through, I mean, all of those tragedies that you just mentioned, we've gone through those and we've pulled together in the short term. And we have relied on our generosity, charity. And I think that because so many nonprofits and charities, you know, stepped up after in the wake of a lot of those horrible tragedies, some people have kind of latched onto this idea that they are the only, you know, whereas we used to have a government infrastructure to deal with emergencies, to deal with tragedies, so that we could, you know, attack it in a way that was systematic and, you know, in a way that only government can deliver. Then we had people who vilified the government, even among those who benefit from the government the most. And I think that my hope, my sincere hope is that this will help us have that return to the just obvious fact that government can deliver in a way that you're never going to get from philanthropy, because for nothing else, just the sheer volume of government and just the fact that, I mean, there was a time when we had the brightest minds. I mean, maybe not so much now, but we had the brightest minds at the table in government. We had people who truly were passionate about serving humanity in government. They really saw it as public service, and I am hopeful that we will have a return to, you know, this appreciation for that infrastructure, instead of what has been for the last 20 to 30 years, this constant vilifying of, you know, public education and even, you know, what we're experiencing now, where you have an entire department that was in place to try to prevent what we have right now from happening, that just got completely gutted because a businessman thought, oh, we just hire those people when we need them. We don't need them between, you know, disasters, which is just a very non-governmental way of looking at things. That's the way the businessman looks at. And by the way, an unsuccessful businessman. I think that it's very important for us to note that.
Kim, I really appreciate your point about the sustainability of this human spirit, and I think one of the tenets that could aid in this being sustainable is that when you have a breakdown of systems like the one that we're witnessing now, we have an opportunity to change the system, because one of the reasons why it hasn't been so sustainable is because the system is so hard to crack. And we're talking about systemic and cyclical policy that has continued to perpetuate oppression against the most marginalized among us. And so when the system is depressed in a way now where we're just trying to figure out how to stay afloat, I think we also should be figuring out how to rebuild it in a way that makes this human spirit and this generosity sustainable, this interconnectedness sustainable. And you know, I'm also an optimist, Donna. I'm hoping for something for something like that after we
and I
after
think
we
the
come
gift
out
of
of
where we
this.
are is
So
making this kind of thing visible. When I served on the Wayne State Board, I would
We
constantly
miss
have this
you. Come
discussion
back.
oh
We
Lord.
need you, Kim. We need you.
Don't do that to me,
Oh,
Ned. Okay, so
you abandoned me.
moving on. But but you know, one of the conversations I would have all the time is people would say, tuition is out of control, tuition is spiraling, and my family cannot afford. And I would say, this is a political decision, right? Because there's a reason, Donna, when you mentioned earlier about how people were able to go to college using resources in the past. When I went to Wayne State, even though I went on a full scholarship, but even if I hadn't, I would have been able to easily afford going to Wayne State University because it was affordable. And we have made, it's not even visible for people now that the reason that was the case, it's not just like money, college became unaffordable because of decisions that are made on the local level. The state has decided to disinvest. Right. And that was a political decision. It's just like it could be a political decision to invest again. And I think that the gift that we might have of this terrible tragedy is it makes it visible. This is what happens when you don't have a functioning government.
And
so if we can make it visible for people, maybe they will demand the change that people have become accustomed to, or a reversal of the kind of policies that people have become accustomed
I think
to.
so. I think that part of it is a shift in attitudes. I think that Ayn Rand's thinking started to impact people. I think the whole concept of enlightened self-interest and makers and takers and all of that, and it becomes almost like a public way of seeing things. And I hear people who are ordinarily good people talking about, free stuff. I don't believe in free stuff. And it's like, stop listening to Rush Limbaugh and you will stop talking like that, right? And so I have to believe that that we have a responsibility, those of us working in the public domain. And I'm super excited about what you're doing in Lansing, because I believe that what you're doing is going to really help open up dialogue and help create opportunities where we're going to start talking about what's happening in our state differently, and therefore hopefully making different kinds of policy. And that I really appreciate the work that you're doing at TechTown, because you're an incubator of ideas. I mean, people don't just go there for small businesses, but every time I go into TechTown, I feel like I come out a little bit smarter, because there's all of these people gathered there thinking about how to reshape the world. And I think that that's really what's going to make change in our society. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a little bit more optimistic about where we're going to be on the other side of this for a couple of reasons. One, I think economically it's going to be rough, but I think that's going to force us, much like the Depression did, to put in place, because we've seen what happens without that strong social safety net. We're going to put a lot more of it in place over the next couple of years. And two, I have a lot of faith in technology, not unfettered technology, not that the market's going to save everything, but I don't think that COVID-19 is going to turn into something that causes this type of reaction again, because I think 3 to 6 months from now, we will have a whole set of vaccines. We will have a whole set of treatments. It will turn into much more like the flu, where clearly you want to get your shot and you want to, be smart, but you don't have to lock down the whole world to stop it. So there are already tons of researchers have sprung into action, testing all sorts of stuff. Don't listen to Donald Trump. Don't go take that malarial drug that just killed somebody in Arizona because they saw it on Fox News. But I think real researchers are going to come up with some really interesting ways to mitigate it. And I think that happened. That's what we've been working on at TechTown for a while. When we start with things like Detroit Urban Solutions, how do we bring technology to solve problems? Technology is really good at it. Actually, it creates new ones too, but it's really good at solving problems when we try. I think we're going to see more a demand for the public sector to step up and solve some more problems.
Yeah. Well, I'm a techie myself. Super techie.
Yeah, thank you.
Love technology.
Go ahead, Donna.
All of that.
Yeah.
And I think that it will also help to promote new ways of us interacting and connecting with each other. And if we can harness the good of that, that's always going to be good. I think that the world changes, and somehow those of us who are working to try to promote change can make a difference. Kim, do you see your role at the state as also harnessing some of those changes in thought as well as actions?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, the way that we've organized our work with the Poverty Task Force, we have, obviously the task force is made up of state employees, the state directors of 19 different state departments, who are all pretty occupied with other stuff. So, it can't be their number one focus. So we have created work groups. We've asked them for their greatest minds, for the most innovative thinkers, for the people who are really passionate about their work, who are going to conferences like the one you were supposed to go to in New York this week, Donna, who are going to, who are, reading the trade publications, who understand what other states are doing that are really innovative, and who have their own ideas, so that we can be, so we can incubate new ideas, but also better deliver the, long-standing ideas that are already in place. I mean, some of the things that we need to address in our state are we're just doing stuff wrong. When we talk about TANF, when we talk about the way that we have kind of dismantled the safety net, rebuilding the safety net has got to be a priority of our work. But then we also have to have innovative ideas to help lift more people in Michigan out of poverty, so that they're not, we want for people to be able to live in poverty with dignity, but we want them to ultimately transcend poverty. And so I think that you need to have that push and pull. You need to have those people who are thinking about how we can better deliver what we already have. And then also those new ideas that can help the state build partnerships with philanthropy, with organizations like yours, so that we can have those innovative ideas, so that more people will not have to live in poverty. And so I think that's the exciting thing
Great.
about this
So
work.
that's great. I really I want to wrap it up by just giving out some information as it relates to the executive order that came from the governor's office today for the stay home, stay safe executive order. So things like your grocery stores, takeout food, the pharmacy, going for a walk, going to the hospital, or getting gas, all of that stuff is still encouraged, right? Um, you
I
they
wouldn't say encouraged, Orlando.
the website Michigan. Well, what she said was the governor did say
Yes.
we encourage you to go
Right.
for a walk,
Yes.
keeping your distance and things like that. That's what I meant. Okay, and the other things that
Right.
are available to you are your grocery stores. She implored us not to hoard, but to be generous and be neighborly. Uh, your gas stations and things are still open. This is what she is saying not to do. You can't leave home unless your employer designates you as a critical infrastructure worker. You can't participate in any public gatherings. You can't visit anyone in the hospital or nursing home or residential care facilities, and you can't go to the mall or restaurants. She specifically
Right.
said this is no longer a recommendation. This is an order. So we want to make sure that people have that information. We imagine that you may have questions, and so we want to direct you to michigan.gov/coronavirus, or you can also visit the cdc.gov/coronavirus to look at the frequently asked questions there. Did I miss anything,
Well, I just think that it's
experts?
important for us to know that, the governor has loosened some of the requirements for being able to be eligible for unemployment. We now have a state executive order that has a moratorium on evictions. We have we're seeing on the local level in Detroit and Wayne County, efforts to try to as Donna talked about earlier, things that we were told were not possible have now been made possible. I think it's really important that people know that, at least on a state level, there is a recognition of the fact that we know that individuals are going to be hurting because of this, horrible thing, and that and that we need to have um, strategies in place so that people are able to have shelter, have food, have the basic staples of life that are important. And I think that if they visit our coronavirus website, they'll see some of the things that the governor has put in place, loosening some of the requirements for childcare, so that those frontline workers who have to work will have access to childcare for their children. Um, those kind of strategies that she's putting in place to try, that we're putting to place as a state, to try to make what is bound to be, a very difficult time for our state more easier for people to navigate. And so I would just encourage your listeners to look at the website if they have access to the web. To a lot of our offices, our frontline offices, like for unemployment, are no longer open. The actual offices are closing down because of the governor's order, but there will be access to telephone operators who can help you with your unemployment, with filing for unemployment and for understanding what other benefits you might be eligible at this difficult time.
Yeah, I have that
Yeah.
number too right here, Kim. The hotline is 1-888 535 6136. Again, that's 1-888 535 6136. You're listening to a special episode of Authentically Detroit covering the COVID-19 pandemic here in the city of
If I
Detroit.
could just add that,
Anything else, Kim?
come to the
Donna?
websites
Yeah.
of organizations like ECN. We're constantly updating our website, our Facebook page. We haven't gotten to our website yet, but we're constantly updating our Facebook page and soon our website. So like us on Facebook, like Authentically Detroit on Facebook, and we'll make sure to put information on there as well. And if you know of any information that we're missing, give us a call or text us or email us, and we will make sure to include that, because a knowledgeable community is obviously going to function a lot better.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Ned, how can small businesses apply for? I know that you're already overextended, but I have no doubt because you have your mindset to it that you're going to figure out how to meet the need. How can
Absolutely. I strongly encourage businesses to keep applying, because I'm right now having conversations with foundations to say, hey, if you want to get money out the door to the people who need it the most immediately, I have them. I've got them teed up. So TechTownDetroit.org is the website. There is a big banner at the top of the webpage that says click here for COVID-19 information. There you will find our information about the program and the application. It's in English, it's in Spanish, it's in Arabic, it's in Bengali. So we're trying to make it sure it's really accessible to everybody. And then you'll be able to apply right there online. Get your documents in order. You're going to need some tax returns and some financial statements about your business and a W-9 and things like that. But we tried to make it as easy as possible to apply. And if you're so inclined, if you're a listener out there who just wants to help out, techtowndetroit.org/donate. We will happily get your money to a Detroit small business in need.
Awesome. So I want our thanks to Kim Trent and Ned Stabeler for joining us today. We appreciate you both taking the time. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Authentically Detroit, or email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. So Donna, you got any shout outs?
Phyllis Edwards at Bridging Communities. Listen to me, I don't even know her organization.
Bridging Communities.
Phyllis has taken the time while we are all in shutdown to write a proposal on behalf of other community development corporations so that we can work collectively to help serve our community. So I want to thank you, Phyllis, for your leadership. I understand she's had a loss, and I'm sorry for that, but otherwise I think she would have been here today to tell us about it, and maybe she'll come on in a future week. And I want to say a prayer to everybody who knows somebody who is hospitalized or suffering. Kim, I think all of us know of at least one person who is struggling right now with this disease. We love you. We are thinking of you and praying that you get better.
Yeah.
We love you. Yes. Yeah. I want to shout out, Kim and Ned for joining us today and being so flexible with time. So much information coming out at a rapid pace, and so I want to thank you both for having the flexibility to join us and to make sure that our community receives factual information. Thank you both. Do you guys want to shout out anybody?
Well, we just wanted to shout out you guys. Well, I'll speak for myself. I guess I won't speak for Ned, although I've been known to do that in the past. I guess that's one reason he's probably glad I'm not on the Wayne State board anymore. But speaking for myself, I do want to just really thank you guys for continuing to offer just really intelligent discussion about Detroit in a way that really unpacks the history of this city. You're not just speaking in a vacuum. You're not just talking points. I think we've seen kind of this angry activism that's kind of bubbled up that is not informed by kind of like grounding in history, grounding in real solutions. And I just want to thank you for being really part of that part of Detroit leadership that is about solutions. I think that's so important. I want to thank you for
Thank
for
you.
doing
Yeah,
that.
I agree. As always, I agree with Kim. You guys are super. It's a fabulous opportunity, and as you know, I listen to the podcast, and so having the opportunity to be on it, I feel like I'm a little bit of celebrity now. I can't wait to share it with my mom.
Whatever, man. All right, that does it for this episode of
All
Authentically
right. Be
Detroit.
safe.
Thank you for listening and catch the
Thank
wave.
you.